All right, this is the Nam book, or what would be the Vietnam book. It's the Vietnam War, and it's put out by Battlefront and Osprey Games. It's a hardcover book, about 230 pages. Don't let that scare you, because really only 50, 60 pages is the rules. The rest of it is the missions, and all the forces are in here. So if you're wanting to play this game, this is the only book you have to get. On the back here is a little blurb about the Vietnam War. Now, one thing I will say just ahead of time is, if you played Flames of War 4th edition, there's only a few things you're going to have to read in this. And that's going to be coming from Team Yankee. And the thing that's coming from Team Yankee are the strike aircraft and the helicopters. All the rest of the rules, except for a few changes, is Flames of War. So if you play Flames of War, really all you have to do is read the strike aircraft and helicopters. If you're playing Team Yankee and you haven't played 4th, I would say read the rules. Because there are some things like artillery and all that's a little different. So we'll take a look and see what's inside. All right, this is the table of contents. You got basically the history of the Vietnam, how you play the game, any special rules, and picking up your force. So really, up to 60 is, from 10 to 60 is the main rules, and then stuff you may have to look up as you play the game. So, like I said, this whole book is not the rule book. Down here on forces, they expanded it over here. So you have the U.S. force, the South Vietnamese, the Australians with New Zealanders, and the South Vietnamese force. This is our mission section. Maybe you want to paint, if you want to be realistic, how they were back then. There's some painting guides, and then the catalog of Battlefront stuff and the index. All right, this next section is basically the history of the Vietnam War, where it's located, and then they're going by years, telling you what happened in 1965, 1966, and so forth. But what's really interesting is they have these Billboard Top 10. So what were the Billboard Top 10 songs of 1968, let's say? So let's take a look here, and you kind of can see. And it's kind of interesting what songs on this list are still played today. Like on oldie stations, some that are not. So, it can give you an option of playing these songs while you play the game. But it's going through each year, and so that's really what this first section is about, is the history of the Vietnam War. All right, this section here basically goes over what do you need to play the game, like the battlefield, your miniatures, your dice, tape measure, and stuff like that. But there is a website you can go to, and it's www.nam for NAM miniaturesgame.com. Now, when I looked at it last time, there wasn't much up there, but as things get released for this game, I'm pretty sure they're going to update that website. This section goes, how do you measure, how do you roll dice, and so forth, and if there's a problem between players, how do you resolve that? This is going through teams and units. Basically, think of teams as a tank is a team, and then 4 of those tanks are grouped together. You bought them together, that's a unit. And then there's unit leaders, who's their commander in that group, formations, and there's support. And then there's unit cards, which I have some Flames of War unit cards. And what's nice about these is it tells you what they're hit on, what their rating is to do skills, the morale basically, how fast they can move, what weapons they can shoot with, and all that. So they're going to have that in this game also. And another thing that's on the back is how much it costs to play them and any special rules they have. So there's stuff like that, and there's a machine gun team, maybe you have artillery, but also vehicles, like the half-track or a Sherman or even aircraft. So that's basically what these cards, and it describes how these cards are laid out. Next part is terrain. The new thing with this is if you played Flames of War or Team Yankee, this is all going to be familiar except for elephant grass. And I'll kind of zoom in here. There we go. And you kind of see what elephant grass does in this game. If you need to read along, you can pause the video. And then this one's going to go over rivers. because you can play a river game like your patrol PT boats and stuff like that on a river. And so that's what these sections are about. All right, this is set up as I go, you go. So what's going to happen is it's my turn. I'm going to go through the starting step, which is over here. And I have to do these in the order they're shown. I can't do 1, then jump down to 7, then 4. I have to try to remount my bailed out tanks, and then unpin, check unit last stand, formation, and so forth. So I can't roll for strike aircraft until I roll for reserve. So when it's starting my turn, I go through this. Then I move any units I want to move. Then I shoot with any of the units I want to shoot with. Then I can assault with units if I can. Then it's my opponent's turn. They go through their starting step. They move their units. They shoot with them. And they assault. Then it's going to be my turn and so forth. So that's how the game is set up. This also goes through, if you're only familiar with, like I said, the Flames of War, this is going to show some of the strike aircraft and helicopters and how they work. So you want to look at that. Now, I wasn't sure how I wanted to do this video because there's a lot of stuff to cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip through the pages. You'll be able to see them. And I'm going to bring up anything that may be of interest, especially if you've played, I keep bringing this up, but this is important. If you played either of these, some of the differences that might pop in. So this would be, if it's my turn to move, this is how this works. And you have tactical and dash speed. Basically, tactical is I want to be able to shoot. Dash is I don't really want to shoot. I just want to move as far as I can, as allowed by the vehicle, or troop, or whatever's moving. How going to ground works. Also, it's important that you read what's in the caption. Sometimes there's rules in here. They've stuck in sometimes some rules. You think they'd be in here, but they're actually sometimes in these pictures. So read both of those. And how to stay in command, what happens if you're not in command, moving through teams, gaps, how big a gap, and how terrain works. And here's a nice little chart, shows the terrain. And they got to buy, like here's vegetation, hedges, where's water? Oh, here's water. So this is all the water. How fast you can dash through it. If there's a cross check needed, like your vehicles, will they get kind of stuck? How tall it is for visibility, and does it provide bulletproof cover? And in transports, and of course, if you've played only Flames of War and have not played Team Yankee, this section is going to be something you want to look at because this talks about how the helicopters work as being transports. And then these are the special movement orders that all units can do. They just have to do well, they'll say what they have to do to be able to do it. So, like maybe they want to move 4 inches and still be able to shoot. Because normally if you move, your shooting goes down. Like a tank would normally get 2 shots on if it stands still, but if move, it only gets 1 shot. If you're successful at a blitz move, you can move up 4 inches and still get your 2 shots. So that's kind of what some of these things are. So that's what's in the movement section. All right, this goes through shooting. So here's the sequence. Is it already in range? Can you see them and so forth? This also talks about how you can read those weapons, like how far they can shoot, how many dice you get to roll. Anti-tank is basically how well can you penetrate a tank. The higher the number, the easier it is. And this is what, if you do penetrate and they fail their save, do you blow up the tank? And then some special rules for those weapons if you want to shoot at aircraft. And again, I'm going to just flip through it, and if you need to read more, you can pause the video. And this goes through the steps. So here's step 1, step 2, and so forth. And again, always read the pictures here because they give illustrations. Sometimes rules are thrown in, so I'm always saying that, but it has gotten me sometimes. And so I'm just going to go on, and again, if you haven't played with any aircraft, like the strike aircraft, well, they kind of added this kind of in Flames of War, but if you haven't messed with a helicopter, you definitely want to read on how to shoot at those and how that works with concealment. And number 7 and so forth. Mistaken target's pretty cool. How saves are done between tank teams and infantry, aircraft, and so forth. It goes through all that. And what happens if they fail or they succeed. And what's interesting here is I have never played the Vietnam War. They have not had this in Flames of War Team Yankee, but assault boat damage. Interesting, got a little deal here. So this is something you want to look at. And this is the last section for shooting. All right, this section goes over artillery, which is another type of shooting. but it's lobbing the shells onto an opponent into an area. It says who can bombard. You need somebody to spot for them to call in the shots, and this is the order for this also. So like the shooting had its order, this has an order you do. And basically, this is like my Flames of War template, 6x6. And so this is what you're going to put down. Like this is, pretend like I'm aiming right on this die. I would center this right over the die. And then if my shooting artillery team's over here, I have to rotate this arrow to point towards them. And then I have a possibility of hitting anything, even if they're partially underneath it. Like let's say this tank is partially underneath that template, I have a chance to hit that tank. And then it goes through those steps there for the artillery. And again, if you need to pause it to kind of look at something, go ahead. I'm just going to keep flipping. Repeat bombardment. If you have been playing Team Yankee, this is something you want to look at. Because if you keep hitting a spot over and over, that same spot with your artillery team, turn after turn, unarmored and like gun teams and infantry teams have to re-roll saves. So it can be pretty devastating to keep hitting the same spot. They'll probably want to get out of there. So that's something to look at. And then finally, how smoke bombardment works. All right, this section is about assaulting, which is at the end of your turn. So basically, you go through the starting steps, you move your units, you then shoot with your units, then you can assault with those units that can assault, and it goes through who can assault here. And here's your steps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And again, you have to do them in that order. And it talks about how you get in. The opponent gets defensive fire. Do you make it through that defensive fire, or is it just too much? You guys go, oh, whoa, whoa, that's too much. We got to pull back. If you make it in, how do you hit? How do saves work? Do you counterattack? And this is one of those games that if your two forces are fighting each other, I come in and assault you. It doesn't mean that your guys are going to go, well, I'm coming back at you. They may go, you know what? This is enough. We're going to break off. Or yeah, we're coming up, blah, blah, and they take some guys out, and these guys goes, you know what, that's enough, we're going to break off. So you have to see if your guys have the morale to stay in the assault, and that's what that tests to counterattack. And how to counterattack, or you can break off, and then what happens when you somebody breaks off, how do you consolidate? All right, for the last part of really the rules of the game, see I'm already there, is unit last stand and formation last stand. Unit last stand is, this is a lone, well it says here, if you're down to 2 tanks, if you're, basically it says you're all right if you're 2 or more. So basically if you're down to 1 tank, or this unit of gun teams is down to 1 gun team, or if this unit of infantry is down to 2, and if 1 aircraft team is left, then you need to make a unit last stand. And it basically means, do they stay in the game? And that's part of that starting step you go through. And you roll like kind of basically the morale. If they make it, they stay in that round, that turn, but they may not make it next turn. If they make it again next turn, they're there again. So they stay in the game until the game's over, or they fail and they get taken out. Formation last stand is, there's a difference between formation and support. Formation is like if you're an infantry team, it's your infantry. Support might be some artillery that's been given to you, some airplanes, some tanks. Those don't count. It's really what is your main force built up of, and then what you build for support. And I'll get to that in a little bit about force building. But if your formation's down so much, you're going to automatically lose the game. It's kind of like where some games have where if you lose like 50% of your force, you have to make a morale roll or something like that. It's kind of like that, except you automatically lose the game if your formation gets down too low. And then we got some weapon special rules. There's some new ones in here. I've never heard of buckshot before till now. So there's that. Some equipment special rules. And some special abilities. And again, if you need to look at these, just pause the video. And finally, we have how guerrilla warfare works and how resistant fighters work. All right, for this next part, I'm just going to kind of go through each force that's available. And I'm just going to flip through the pages so you can just see them and so forth. Because I'm not really going to describe it, and this way you kind of see what's in here. But it goes through how a force is built, and I'll go through this part here when we get to one of the force diagrams. of actual one. And then how you pick your force, do you do points and so forth, like how many points do you want to play, and then those cards talked about. So let's take a look here. So here's your forces in Vietnam. This is your US. So this is your formation. Okay, do you want to go with a rifle company, or do you want to go maybe with a tank company? Okay, that would be your formation. This is your support. So if this ever gets knocked down, that's when your formation morale kicks in. These don't count towards that. You can lose all these and it doesn't affect them. These affect those guys. If these guys, too many of these get knocked down, these guys will leave the game. So that's the difference between formation and support. So it goes through the history of the US and the different units there. And so if I want to go rifle company, these black boxes I have to buy. So I have to buy an HQ, which is right here. And it costs this many points. Then I have to buy at least 2 of rifle platoons. Boom. So do I want the 7.1 or the 9.1? I'll kind of zoom in here. And then maybe some options I can add. And here's what it takes to hit them, what the morale is, what weapons they have, how fast they can move, and so forth. Now, also, apparently, I have to buy a Huey section, which is over here. And then do I want another? This is my formation. Again, if I lose so many of this, I lose the game, so be careful. So do I want this? Do I want to add a machine gun unit, mortar, medic team, and then every unit in the US gets choice of this. So if you go with a tank team, this is support for them. If you go with the rifle company, support for them. If you go with this company, support. So the rifle, if I bought everything I want here, this is my other option. Now there is a way to do some mixed stuff, but I'm not going to go into that. But you can do a tank company formation and an infantry formation, but I'm not going to go into that here. So we'll look at what else is available for US. And again, if you need to look at these longer, you can pause it. So this is the Black Horse Cavalry for US. And again, you have to buy this. Then you have to buy, now this says or, so I can buy this or this. I have to buy one of them. And I have to buy this. I have to buy the black boxes. The rest of these are optional. This is all formation. Then I go back to that one chart, which is support. So this is what's available for that. So I'm not going to go over this anymore. I'm just going to flip through them. So this is some more stuff that's optional, or the options for US. This is Tropic Lightning, another force you could build. It's another rifle company. And what's available for them. And then this rifle company, which is a mech one, so it's going to act a little different. If you notice, it's got some of these transports. And that. And again, I'm going to flip through these pages pretty quick. So if you need to look at it any longer than this, just pause the video. Here's the Marines. So if you want to play the Marines, you can do that right here. And the Delta, which I'm feeling it's getting to the riverboat stuff. Yep. So if you want to do some, where you have some boats and stuff on the river, here's your options for that. Now these are also in Team Yankee. It's kind of interesting. Probably different weapons though. Yeah, looks like probably different. It is different weapons though. And there's your strike aircraft. Now one of the neat things is you can have some Navy SEALs. So that might be an option that's available in that support section. So I'll flip back to the Navy SEALs in just a second. I just want to check something. So if we go back to, I don't know if I can find it. Here it is. They're probably somewhere in here, like Special Forces right there. So those, like a support section you want, oh, I want these. I want to get these Navy SEALs. There you go. So this is available to all those forces. Or Force Recon Rangers. Now this is the South Vietnamese force, so it talks about their history and their units that are available. So this is all they have available for formation, and this is their support. And again, I'm just going to flip through these pretty quick. If you need to look at them longer, just pause, because there is a lot I still have to go through. But I thought it would be best just to have it where you can actually see these to see if it's something you would want. And then this is the Australians with New Zealanders, their force. And this is what their formations look like, and then their support. And they're going to have different weapons than the South Vietnamese and the US. So like they have the Centurion tank. This looks like a nice looking tank though. And now we're getting to the North Vietnamese. So these are, all those people will be taking on these guys. So it goes through history, and then these are their formations and their support. Now, one thing I do have to say is they don't get helicopters, they don't get strike aircraft, and their tanks suck. I mean, for the most part, they have like no armor. If I remember right, they really don't have much armor. Well, I kind of sped through that one pretty quick. There we go. Need to hold it a little longer than that. And some of them have some special rules like Guerrilla Fighters, which I talked about or showed you on that other page. So if you're wondering what is Guerrilla Fighters, that's in that one page I talked about towards special rules. They had about Guerrilla Fighters. Yeah, here's their tank with a whole whopping 6 on the front. And let's go to like the Centurion here, who has 13 on the front. So this tank is going to shoot, and its anti-tank is 12. This tank's going to take us 13. You're going to roll a d6 and add to it. It can't even penetrate the front. But this one is going to shoot it with an anti-tank of 16. And if it doesn't move, it's going to get 2 shots, where this only gets 1. Oh, it does get 2. Most of them only got 1, but this one gets 2. And they're going to roll a d6, add it. The most they get is 12. This is going to automatically penetrate them. So like I said, their tanks aren't that great. This one has a 13. So this one's a little better. I guess they're a little better than I thought, but it only gets 1 shot whether you move or not, compared to 2 if you don't move for the Centurion. And then there's the number 3. I guess what I saw was those 2 with the 6 and the 2. That's why I think, well, this one's much better. So if you want to go with a heavy, I'll say heavy tank force for Vietnamese, it's probably the K2. And we'll continue through these forces. Now we're into missions. One thing is, this is so different in this game. It's not in Flames of War and Team Yankee. If you lose one unit, it's this chances of victory. If you lose this unit, it's this. They have a really weird system, I think, at Team Yankee, because basically, let's take a King Tiger versus a Jeep. A unit of Jeeps, a couple of Jeeps versus a King Tiger. If you take out that King Tiger, it's the same as taking out those Jeeps, because you took out one unit. This kind of gets away from this, and I'm going to zoom in here. This is one of the neat things. I hope they're kind of heading towards maybe something like this with Flames of War and Team Yankee, is you get a victory point if you destroy a unit. If you take out that Patton or a Centurion, you get a point. If you take out 2 of that one nice tank that they have for the North Vietnamese, or this tank, if you take out 3 of the any of the other 3 tanks, you get a point, and so forth. You can see what you get points for, and you got this sheet, and actually I think it's in the back here. There it is, right there. The sheet right here, and you're going to mark them and see how many points you get. And then the winner will subtract their difference from the loser, and that's where this chart comes in. So the winner won by, 7 points. It's a minor victory. If they won by 9, it was a stunning victory. Oh, here's the difference point. Sorry. So if they won by 3 points, major victory. But if they only won by 1, it's a minor victory. Because they talk about it's not so much what you accomplished, how much did you destroy in the game, in the Vietnam game. So this is something that is different than what is found in the normal games of Flames of War and Team Yankee. And so I like this much better, to tell you the truth. And the rest of it's pretty straightforward about how do you capture objectives, how ambushes work. They're the same as in Flames of War and Team Yankee. Reserve, and so forth. And then here's the missions. Now there are some different ones, like I'm not used to seeing this one, so there are some different missions in here. And again, if you need to look at them longer, just pause the video. And special missions. So I haven't even really played them or really looked at a lot of these, so I'm not sure about the total thing of it. But here's the river one, if you want to do a river one. The streets. Some of these might be interesting to play in Team Yankee and all that, but I'm looking at this one. This one's like, looks almost like a 4x4 compared to a 4x6. That was throwing me off for a second, I thought. So there's that one. And then how the medic teams work, how night fighting works, and it's going to be the same as it looks like Team Yankee. You have to put the markers down. And then how minefields work. And they're doing the Team Yankee minefields, not the Flames of War. Flames of War are rectangles, about like 8 inches long and about a couple inches wide, where Team Yankee, it's about the size of a CD. And then here's your painting guides if you want your to be what they actually look like during that time and want to paint them to that specification. They tell you how to do that. And how you base your men. And this is, of course, the catalog. So this is going to be what's going to be updated on that website as they become available. So a lot of stuff going to be coming. And it's 230 pages, so I'm like 227, so we're almost at the end here. And then there's that, and an index that goes over to here. So what do I think of NAM? Well, I started playing Flames of War version, I started like 2011, it was version 3. Then Team Yankee came out a few years ago, and I really liked the rules in Team Yankee. So my friend and I, we started playing this, and had helicopters and the strike aircraft. It was all really cool. And then we had some problems with some of the forces. That just, infantry was just way too powerful. I mean, they just took everything out with their missiles. So when this came out, the 4th edition rules, we looked at it like, woohoo, this is basically Team Yankee cleaned up, I think, with the repeat bombardment, which is needed in Team Yankee. I think well, I'm not going to go through all that. So I really, really like the 4th edition Flames of War. The games have been going quicker. The formation morale checks, it changes how you build your force. And I've lost or won more games because of formation morale checks than just winning by objectives. So this is kind of a mix between these two, but it's mostly this. I like it, but my problem is the Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese. I mean, you look at these others, you get strike aircraft, you get helicopters, you get some really good tanks, you get this and that, you get flamethrower tanks and stuff like that. And then you get to the South Vietnamese, which are somewhere in here. Look at what you get. Okay, you get men, and more men, and more men. I mean, you do have some ambushing things you can do with them, and it's more men, and men. It's just infantry, 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 infantry. And see, infantry, infantry, infantry. No helicopters, no strike aircraft. You get some of these tanks, one good tank, the rest of them kind of, eh. And you do get that in this one. And men. And men. And men. And men. And men. Men, 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 men. And so when I look at this, I'm going, okay, USA's cool. British, or the New Zealanders, South, you know, they all get these things. So I'm feeling kind of sorry for the person that has to play North Vietnam and what they have to choose from. So for me, The only way I'm going to play this game is I'll probably as like a one-off and play once every blue moon, but we're just going to proxy with like my Soviet stuff and the USA stuff we've got, because I got like helicopters with my Soviets, and we got some of the Cobras and stuff like that from Team Yankee, and just play it that way. But otherwise, unless you really just like playing infantry and having ambushing infantry and stuff like that, I don't know if this game's for you. And I don't know how well the game would play playing US versus Australia, or US versus South Vietnam, or Australia versus South Vietnam. I don't know how that would work, what they call blue on blue compared to blue on red. So that is my thoughts on this. I do like this system. It's been thrown in here, so I do like it. I do like the helicopters and strike aircraft. I like to repeat bombardment. But it just seems like North Vietnam just doesn't have the toys like the other forces do.